All animals need to find food to survive. Over millions of years, nature has created hunters with powerful tools for finding and killing their prey. There was actually a moment in time when this eternal dance of life and death began.
Once animals start looking for other organisms and things to eat, and feeding on other organisms, the geologic record is changed forever.
Scientists all over the world are tracking down the animal that started it all, the first hunter. But the terrible beast they're searching for may have been something altogether unexpected.
These are possibly the ancestors of most of the higher animals, and possibly, who knows, even human beings.
If so, they had a profound impact on animal life. The first hunter also invented a new way to mate. Join us as we seek out some of the strangest animals on the planet, simple creatures that hold clues to our own evolution. Deep within their genetic code lies evidence of how the hunter came to change the shape of life. Whitey Hagedorn is walking a long way back in time. In the rugged Inyo Mountains of California, he is seeking remnants of an ancient ocean containing clues to early life. Hagedorn is a paleontologist searching for traces of the first hunter. His quest is not easy because the first animals didn't leave fossilized bones. They had no bones. But they did leave clues. Clear traces of their existence. The same kinds of traces are left by animals today.
When you're looking for tracks and trails of organisms, canyons like this are an ideal area. Especially little flat spots like this. Actually, looks like we've got some tracks right here. Judging from the closeness of the footprints to one another, suggests that it was probably walking rather than running. In a way, its tracks are recording its movement, its behavior, its size, writing its steps on the earth.
Hagedorn is looking for the first steps animals ever took, more than 500 million years ago. California's ever-changing geology has pushed the past up to the surface, peeling off the layers of time, revealing the early drama of animal life.
I'm playing detective in deep time. I mean, I'm trying to think what was on the seafloor 540 million years ago. And the trick that we have as paleontologists is to go back in the geologic record and look in the rocks for evidence of tracks or trails of ancient organisms, particularly for intervals of time where maybe the animals themselves aren't preserved. were these organisms doing? How did they live? What did they eat? How big were they? How many were they? And what do those tell us about the development of early life on Earth?
For organisms to leave tracks seems natural and inevitable, until you consider that animals flourished for millions of years while fixed to the ocean floor. The first animals on this planet were like the sponges of today. Their cells worked together, pumping water and filtering out tiny bits of food. But there was one thing they couldn't do: move. Most of the other animals alive back then didn't get around much either. These were the flower-like cnidarians, which could stretch and flex. They had muscle and nervous systems, yet they couldn't go out and pursue the world. For locomotion to develop, a very different animal would soon emerge. A creature with a brand new talent. On the way to finding this animal, Hagedorn has found evidence of active mobility dating back 540 million years. The evidence he has found is as plain as day, but it was only preserved by a lucky accident.
Some soft-bodied organism was cruising around on the seafloor, and all of a sudden, a storm event occurred, and this entire area was blanketed by a thin veneer of sand, effectively sealing these traces into the rock record.
The sand entombed the ancient sea floor and preserved their trails. The tracks that etch this rock are like a written history. But they date from a time when the world was already teeming with hunters. To find the very first hunter on Earth, Hagedorn will have to look even further back in time.
I have a clue here, a clue there, and I try to piece them together and create a story as to find out who's the culprit.
The culprit was the first animal in the world that could search and destroy. And it probably made its appearance about 565 million years ago. Today, new evidence is bringing that creature to light. It was a new kind of animal that left its mark on the Earth. Its trail is hardly bigger than a strand of hair, yet its importance is vast.
Well, right at this time, about 565 million years ago, there was sort of revolution in animal body plans. Organisms for the first time became able to move under their own control in a directed fashion. And one of the ways we know that is by looking at trace fossils. By looking at that trail, we can almost certainly say that this animal had an ability to move sediment. Prior to this time, there weren't very many organisms that could do that.
The question is, what kind of animal was it? To those who can read the signs, its tracks sketch a portrait of the creature itself. The trail is only a few millimeters wide, so the animal had to be thin. And the track is rounded, so the creature was probably cylindrical. There are no scratches along the edge of the trail, so it didn't have any appendages, no arms or legs. Most importantly, the trail shows evidence of a sense of direction. This animal had a head, and it knew where it was going. Whoever it was, there is no doubt about its legacy. We may never know which animal was the first hunter, but scientists believe there is an animal living today that gives us a good idea of what that ancient, trailblazing ancestor looked like. This animal is a flatworm. They may be among the most obscure animals on Earth. But near the base of our family tree, a similar creature was the first to move with intent, to explore the world, to hunt. And their direct descendants have spread to every corner of the world. Scientists have described about 20,000 different species of flatworms so far, and more keep turning up, tenaciously surviving in almost every environment. On land, in the oceans, in freshwater ponds, and in the strangest habitat of all, inside the bodies of other animals. The development of the hunter is one of evolution's great success stories. But it's also a story of quiet destruction that still continues today. Every morning, Tom Hills and his dog Jip head out early to run the sheep on his farm in the Scottish Highlands. But Tom's life has changed. Generations of Scottish farmers have worked this land. Land made fertile by generations of native earthworms. Creatures who dine on decaying organic matter don't often make the headlines, but recently earthworms have. That's because they are being hunted to death. The killer comes from an ancient line of predators, but in Scotland, it is relatively new. It's a flatworm from New Zealand.
The first time I remember being aware of them was when fishermen came here to look for worms for fishing, and they complained there was no earthworms. So then we started to look for reasons why there was no earthworms, and we came up with the flatworm.
No one is sure how it got to Scotland, but this is already a worm of ill repute.
Well, they're alien. I mean, they're quite sinister, really. You know? Kind of underneath the ground, you can't see them. But there they are, devouring earthworms. I think that's quite sort of sinister.
Oh, they're horrible little beasties. Grey, flat, cuddled up in below a stone, usually.
Nasty little slimy things. I'm just glad they're just small and not big.
They may be small, but their reputation is growing. Because these predators are turning up all over the UK. It's an all-out flatworm invasion.
Hello, Mrs. Jeffries.
Yes.
Hello, this is Hugh Jones here, calling from the Flatworms Survey.
Yes.
You recently sent me a card saying you'd found New Zealand flatworms in your garden.
Yes, that's right.
Lovely, and I'm really phoning just to try and confirm that with you.
Well, I was digging in...
Studying worms is usually a pretty obscure profession. But this worm is such a bad guy, they actually put it on wanted posters. Its arrival has made biologist Hugh Jones a very busy man.
I wonder if you could tell me under what circumstances you found them, how many you've found, and sort of what sort of colour and size and shape they are.
These worms are very unpleasant looking.
Right.
Are they in any way dangerous?
Well, I don't think they're dangerous, but I certainly wouldn't...
Tell people a strange creature has invaded, and overnight the media will create a sensation.
Now this is going to sound like the plot of a science fiction film. Alien worms invading the country and destroying farmland. Unfortunately, it's
concerned
actually
about
happening.
the future of the British earthworm. They've asked gardeners to capture any New Zealand flatworms they find and send them to their laboratory in Cambridge. Royal Mail aren't quite so keen on the idea.
Cards, calls, and worms came pouring into Hugh Jones. Everybody had a story about the invader.
I brought a plant home from a garden centre. When I was transferring it into one of my pots, I noticed this worm, or what looked like a worm.
And it didn't look like the normal worms I'm used to digging.
I turned over a stone and found something like I'd seen in the paper. It's about 2 inches long, round at one end.
And did it have segments or rings around it?
Sort of an orange colour.
An orange colour, okay.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's absolutely sure how they got here. The suspicion is that they arrived here in potted plants. Initially, they were just regarded as a curiosity, another one of these imported animals that probably doesn't do much harm. Turned out these things are carnivores, they're hunting other animals. They're doing things, they're going out hunting, reproducing, doing everything that every other animal does.
But the way these animals pursue their lives is particularly damaging. Tom Hills knows all about the damage. Earthworms used to help aerate and drain his pastures. Now acres of land sit underwater. Things have gotten so bad, he actually looks forward to a second invasion. This time, it's a convoy of scientists. But the team, led by Hugh Jones, is only here to determine how much land the flatworm has taken over. They're not here to kill the killers. That's proven to be nearly impossible.
Turn up stones and debris of one sort or another. And the bloody things are lying, excuse me, and the things are lying in there. And we try and dispatch them.
How do you kill them? I've absolutely no idea, because you find them under the stones or rocks and they're just flat. And you stand in them, you jump in them, it makes no difference. They don't go away. What can you do?
Pulverise them with stones. Put them into mush.
That's the best way?
Don't know, but the best way, that's the way we do it.
The scientist's way is to test samples of ground using square boxes.
I'll head down towards that cottage for 25 paces, and Julio, if you could head down for that house 25 paces. Is that clear, everybody? Okay, thank you, let's go. There's a battle right beneath our feet. Flatworms like wet soil, damp conditions. And here in the west of Scotland, we've got nice wet conditions which ideally suits these flatworms. And the result is, in this particular area, they're extremely abundant.
It's a battle the flatworms are likely to win, for they bring a powerful array of weapons to the hunt. The most basic requirement for hunting is simple. The predator needs to stalk its prey. And the ancestors of the flatworms were the first animals to crawl.
Associated with the powers of locomotion are development of sense organs, so that they've got a sense where they're going, or what's harmful in front of them, what they might eat in front of them. They've got chemical sense organs so that they can taste the trail of their prey. Things like earthworms leave trails behind them of slime. Flatworms can sense that slime trail and even follow the earthworms.
While the flatworm searches for prey, Hugh Jones too is looking for earthworms.
20, 21, 22. Good.
He uses a mustard solution to flush earthworms from the ground. From the number of earthworms that surface, Jones can measure the extent of the massacre. He's found mass destruction in Scotland, for the New Zealand flatworm has impressive tools for killing. The familiar freshwater planarian shows just how these subtle but deadly tools work. Like many flatworms today, the modern planarian is a smooth hunting machine. But so too were its ancestors, and they lived over 500 million years ago. An ancient worm was the first to develop a new type of nervous system, a centralized one, hooked up to sensors at one end of the body. This was the first animal with a head. Within it, the first brain. In that head were some stunning innovations. A pair of eyes. Eyes that could sense both the intensity of light and the direction from which it came. Placing sense organs near the brain helped fire signals to the rest of the body at top speed. Those signals could spark a sturdy set of muscles running down and around the entire body. These muscles, along with millions of tiny cilia, propelled the worm on a power glide over a self-made cushion of slime. This worm had a direct relationship to the world. It could see and then act on what it saw, like intelligent animals today.
All animals have to obtain food. It's the main purpose, almost the sole purpose of every animal is to feed. Yeah, I mean, these animals have to make decisions. They have to, as it were, decide to go somewhere. They've got to make a decision to move. So they have to have some development of the nervous system, what you can call a brain, the concentration of nerve cells near the front end, which allows them to make what you would call a simple decision-making process.
To find food, today's hunters need extraordinary senses. Even at night, a leopard can see well enough to carry out a devastating ambush. Its talent for the hunt is a legacy from the ancient worm, the first animal to have sense organs in stereo. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears. Stereo senses allow a hunter to sense exactly where its prey is by triangulation, then react and adjust in mere fractions of a second.
one of the wonders of evolution that it happened, and without that initial step of decision-making, who knows where evolution would have led. We'd all still be corals and sponges, I guess.
Today's hunters have developed ingenious ways to capture their prey. But could the very act of hunting really have begun with an ancient worm? Certainly, a modern flatworm on the hunt is an impressive sight. The hunter positions itself to attack, choosing just the right moment to wrap itself around its writhing prey.
It initially wriggles quite violently, and large earthworms can even escape the initial clutches of the flatworm, but relatively small earthworms are fairly doomed almost as soon as the flatworm catches it.
The earthworm's attempts to escape begin to slow. It's believed that the flatworm's slime contains a fast-acting anesthetic.
It sort of crawls alongside the earthworm, surrounds it, the mouth parts of the flatworm emerge from the flatworm and wrap around the earthworm.
The mouth of the flatworm, oddly, is not in its head. It's on the underside of the body. From this mouth, the flatworm launches a device called the pharynx, which it uses to suck down its prey. As the planarians scavenge a fish, the pharynx goes into action. Once inside, food moves through a gut so extensive it reaches to every square millimeter of the flatworm's body. Back in Scotland, yet another earthworm is getting digested.
It's rather slow, but it's nonetheless probably even more gruesome because it's slow. The poor earthworm is dissolved over the course of 35, 40 minutes, that sort of time period.
What farmers here have long suspected, scientists have now confirmed. A couple of dozen flatworms in a single field can kill over 1,000 earthworms a year. The design of the hunter's body has been astonishingly successful. In fact, it's taken flatworms to places you'd never imagine. Some of those places are islands of intimate geography. Inside us. It took them millions of years to adapt, but now many flatworms are parasites. No parasite has a good reputation, but think of them as biological underdogs. They take on creatures hundreds of times their size and turn them into suppliers of food. Tapeworms are a perfect example. Once inside human intestines, a tapeworm can grow to be 60 feet long. They have other adaptations that are equally amazing, but not very pretty. They have no eyes or mouths. Their heads have transformed into ghastly hooks and suckers that latch into the intestinal wall. With a secure hold inside the gut, they can proceed with their main task, making more tapeworms. The worm's body is a conveyor belt, cranking out tiny breeding machines. Each one produces sperm and eggs, generating huge batches of offspring. In fact, the number of eggs generated by even one tapeworm exceeds the total number of human beings alive on Earth. Few of the worm's embryos will survive in the outside world, but those that do have plenty of places where they can go. Flatworms. They may not be beautiful, but you have to admire their ability to go forth and multiply. Human beings, too, are driven to multiply, but none of us can multiply alone. That's why today's hunter can be found cruising places like this. We've actually inherited our basic machinery for sex from the first hunter, which did its cruising more than 500 million years ago. Like us, modern flatworms have their own flamboyant methods for attracting a mate. Some of the most sensational sexual habits in the animal world are found in the sandy shallows of the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Australia. Over millions of years, some flatworms here have developed remarkable sexual equipment and strange ways to go with it. For biologist Leslie Newman, the Great Barrier Reef is a flatworm paradise.
What really interests me is the biodiversity, or how many flatworms there really are, how diverse they are, and how many different environments you find them in. Just looking now, we're sort of at the tip of the iceberg of biodiversity of these marine animals.
Newman's research has yielded an astonishing harvest of new species, each one more spectacular than the last.
I found to date probably 450 species of flatworms, and I've named about 100 to date. And it's great. I think when I'm on a good field trip somewhere new, it's maybe a new species every day. Okay, I'll set it up and we'll check it out. Thanks. I'll just put it on now. Yours is in the dive bag.
Diving on this remote reef, Newman and her husband Andrew are hoping to find rare flatworms and study their bizarre sexual techniques.
Keep the O, okay? 1, 2, give the O.
The showy markings of the worms are a defensive strategy. Fish learn to avoid bright colors, which are usually associated with something toxic. Even so, it's hard to find flatworms among all the intricate patterns of the reef.
It's hard to look and to focus in on flatworms when all you can see is brightly colored coral and fish underwater. It takes training and it takes dedication, and it is a challenge, and it's rewarding.
Just after she's explored every nook and cranny, the object of her desire appears on its own, swimming out in the open.
There aren't that many flatworms that swim, but when they do, it's just beautiful. It's just like a ribbon moving and folding and unfolding, and it's like a dance. It's all got to do with the muscle bands, and they're very, very thin. So the muscles are contracting, and they're causing them to move, to undulate as they move along.
But there's more to this flatworm than the way it moves. This is a creature with a sexual life fit for the tabloids. Flatworms are hermaphroditic. They have both male and female sex organs. In fact, the first hunter was also the first animal with an internal system to deliver sperm to an egg.
It means everything to find a mate. If the animals can't find a partner and mix their genetic material, then there's no point being there. When we talk about flatworms, they have both male and female sex organs in the one animal. So if you think about it, that's a great way to be. If you're rare and you're looking for a mate and you're traveling along, you don't have to meet another female or another male, you just have to meet another one.
The Newmans have found a pair, and with them they hope to get a glimpse into the sexual life of the flatworms. They may be a small package of guts and gonads no bigger than a Ziploc bag, but it's a very successful design. Being hermaphroditic is a great strategy to maximize the chances to reproduce, but basic internal fertilization changed the shape of life. The flatworm's ancestor combined the ability to move with a new way to mate. These innovations still define our sexual lives today. Leslie Newman and the Shape of Life photographic team have set up a special tank to film a flatworm's unique mating behavior.
Okay, I'm rolling.
Okay, I'll get the other one in. Oops, we're swimming around. Heads up and look around. They're
okay, hands out of the water.
Okay,
no,
one sec.
Wait.
Yeah, oh, no, there he goes. I think they're going to do it now. I think the one's approaching the other one and it's rearing up. You can see it, you can see it. It's going, it's going, it's going to stab.
Got it, I'm rolling.
Okay. Oh, he's rearing up.
We may never know what the first animal courtship was like, but these flatworms can show us how even simple animals add their own twist. For them, sex is more like war than love. It's known as penis fencing, and the worms are the swordsmen. From the midsection of each flatworm, double daggers protrude. Each dagger is actually a penis. The first one who can make a successful jab delivers its sperm. A bout of this violent sex can last up to an hour and leave gaping holes in the body of the loser. Sperm can be injected anywhere on the skin where it's then absorbed. The losing flatworm must then bear the burden of motherhood, committing valuable resources to having offspring. Soon after, the designated mother will release the young. Primordial worms may seem simple, but they were the first animals to pursue food and sex. They changed the shape of life on Earth.
One of the most exciting discoveries of the past couple of decades in developmental biology and genetics has been the recognition that similar genes make similar structures in very different organisms.
All animals start with an egg. And development in all animals is guided by the same pattern formation genes. Human, flatworm, fly, or annelid worm. In terms of our genes, we're all family.
Animals have come to be very different from each other, and yet we can trace these genetic similarities that say some of their parts are built using some of the same genes, and there must have been some sort of ancestor that had those genes. And one of the great mysteries is, what did that ancestor look like? A reasonable guess is that it could have been something like a flatworm, a sort of creature that must have existed a long time ago that had some sort of circulatory system, some sort of visual system, a bilateral body plan. These pattern formation genes were undoubtedly involved in the progression of events that made this possible.
We will never see the animal itself, the one that first carved a trail some 565 million years ago. But exploring the genetic code has allowed us a way to meet this pioneer. We've found the genes that actually built the first hunter. Those genes created an animal that could move through the world, an animal that could hunt, an animal that could hunt for mates. The explosion of animal life over 500 million years ago used these genes to shape the new body plans for the rest of the animal kingdom. They fill the world with grace and with terror. The hunt is still on. And it all began eons ago with a new kind of body, a body that went out into the world and conquered. The trails left by these first wriggles of worms marked the beginning of a brave new animal world. Those tiny impressions are nothing less than the footprints of an explorer.